Chetty Bobby. Welcome to Wrasslin with Big E and the POT. Podcast tag champs of the whole world, slamming like a DDT. Got it like just like a figure four. Hulk Hogan, all they do is flex. Talking wrestling while they get the dough. Off the top like a superplex. Think they letting up? Hell no. Dusty Rose with the elbow. From the corner like a stinging splash straight to the face. I know you felt those. Hey, y'all crying out for help though. Rising up like the dead man. About to go upside your head like Stone Cold with the bedpan. Bottom line, if you want the facts, welcome to Wrestling's where you need to be. Chetty Bobby, this show improved like John Cena, you ain't seeing me. Bottom line, if you want the facts, welcome to Wrestling's where you need to be. Chetty Bobby, this show improved like John Cena, you ain't seeing me. See ya!
Hey, welcome to Wrasslin. I'm the POT alongside my tag team partner, Big E, aka Them Wrestling Boys. And we're here to bring you another episode of premium wrestling content. What's going on, bro?
What do you say, brothers? Welcome to Wrasslin.
Welcome to Wrasslin, brother. Here for another one.
Yeah,
Dominique
man,
Wilkins, man.
Yeah, 21. Prime time. But yeah, man, episode 21. We're gonna talk tag teams. We're gonna do part 2 of our favorite greatest tag teams of all time in our eyes. What's really going on this week? We got Saturday night's main event coming up. We'll cover and have that for you next Monday, right after be a day afterwards. So we'll definitely cover that. They've already made, I don't know, they got room to make a couple of more matches, one maybe, but they do have Cena and R-Truth, Jey Uso and Logan Paul, and Damian Priest and McIntyre in the steel cage. So I'm sure R-Truth will come that close to winning the title. You know what I mean?
They never said the title was on the line, though.
Oh, come on.
I mean, it obviously should be, but I can't. I don't think they really, you know.
Regardless, it's on that close.
He gonna win by count out.
You know, and I hope, excuse me, I think, you know, of course, they'll have the comedy in it, and R-Truth will come out just like Cena or something. They'll bring something involved, you know. But R-Truth, man, first of all, he deserves to be on Saturday Night Main Event anyway.
Yeah, right.
You know, you love him or hate it, which I don't think anybody hates. I think. Go ahead.
Nah, finish your point about R-Truth and Cena, but there's one more match though. But finish your point.
Yeah. Well, what I'm saying is I love to see R-Truth get a little bit of shine, even though he's not going to go over nothing like that, but still deserves to be out there. Been in the game for a long time, longevity, been in WWE for a long time.
Right.
You know,
right.
They still keep him around. He's still relevant. So, and everybody still loves him, man. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. So, you know, it's nothing. I've never heard anybody say any bad thing about R-Truth. It's always positive, always positive.
Absolutely.
But yeah,
no bad vibes there.
Yeah. What was on your mind? What other match what match did I miss?
You missed the big one. You have CM Punk and Sami Zayn.
Okay, yeah. That's
taking on Seth Rollins and Braun Breaker.
Yeah. So
that's
looking forward to that one. Looking forward to the cage match.
Absolutely.
McIntyre and Priest have been showing out against each other, so I'm definitely looking forward to that. That's
Absolutely
good. Yeah,
absolutely.
Jey Uso and Logan Paul. Logan Paul ain't let us down yet.
Right.
So yeah, so it'll be a good card. I like how they're doing these every couple of months.
Right.
You know, it's just it's real old school feeling, you know, but it's also like a extra PLV a month that you get every couple months.
And
So
how lately the past couple of years their PLE's been like 5 or 6 matches. So it's not
yeah,
like everybody's working. So they keep these events like this, almost like
yeah,
how they used to do the Clash of the Champions and stuff
yeah. I
like
was just
that, to
Clash of
yeah,
Champion vibe.
right, to keep those big matches going. Okay, well we'll put the WWE title on the line for this event, or we'll put the world title on the line at the next event. And
Right.
you try to spread the love a little bit.
Yeah. Where is Cody Rhodes?
He needs a break. He
Clearly.
needs a break. Right. I mean, been running for a whole year, so.
But I mean, they've
And,
been talking. A lot of people. If you watch a lot of these different podcasts, a lot of these folk got some crazy things they saying about
really,
him. But yeah, about him quitting. You know, all that stuff, being mad about losing and all that, which I
man,
don't buy into all that stuff. But
man,
yeah,
yeah,
definitely rumors going around. But let's get into the tag team. This is part 2. We did a couple weeks ago. We did our favorite, greatest tag teams, not in that order list.
right,
And it's just the tag teams that we love, that we liked, or we think belong on this list. So I think we might have covered maybe 10, 12, and we got a lot more,
right.
So we'll go by, and not, like I say, they're not in any order, but we'll go through them and then just give our little take and keep it moving, and probably have a part 3. But me personally have always been a big fan of tag team wrestling. The more creative as far as doing the moves together, I've always liked, with the like the Motor City Machine Guns, the Usos, the Bucks. We'll get into those names and stuff, but just their move set that involves each other would always captivated me about
Right,
tag team.
right,
And I could appreciate that. Especially the finishers. When you have a tag team finisher, is different. You know what I'm
right,
saying? Because it's 2 people. You really got to, both of you got to nail the finisher.
right,
You know what I mean? So,
right.
yeah. Let's get into it. And if you're catching this, if this is your first time watching, hey, thanks for tuning in. But before you watch this one, go back and check the part 1 of the tag team. Just go in there and go in the archives and go on back a couple out of those 20 massive, great episodes that we have available for you.
Absolutely.
And yeah, and shout out to all the subscribers, man. Keep liking, keep commenting. Hey man, get the name out there for it. Share, do what you can. And if you're watching, man, subscribe. Subscribe to us. Go on this journey with us. Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to lock in with us, them Wrasslin boys.
Absolutely.
Please subscribe.
Right.
Right, please. Hey, but let's throw a big one out there. And they did it, and like I say, if they on part 2, don't mean they didn't belong on the first list. Just mean we didn't get to them.
Right.
You get to talk, you go down your list, and everybody, you can't get everybody in. So the Dudley boys, Team 3D, Bubba Ray, Bully Ray, Devon, started off in ECW. Of course, they had the Dudley stable,
Right.
because the Dudley dad, was hitting all
Papa
the rats.
Dudley.
Right, Papa
Yeah.
Dudley hitting all the rats and having illegitimate children all over the Dudleyville.
Right. Right.
The funniest one is Devon being from the south side of Dudleyville, because he's the only black. And if you don't think that's hilarious, then something's wrong with you. But R.I.P. to Big Dick Dudley.
Right. Right.
Yeah. And but shout out Sign Guy Dudley, Dances with Dudleys, um, Spike
It was
Dudley.
like
He had
the
longevity too.
Submerged.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But
Spike had a long run, a decent
yeah.
run.
But as far as Devon and Bubba Ray, when they first started, Bubba Ray was stuttered and wore the rebel flag, headband and stuff a lot of times. And they both had the overalls and the glasses.
Right.
But they took over as far as they were, they wrestled a couple of times. Remember, they didn't get along at first.
Right.
And then they finally came together and became the best tag team out of ECW. And as far as say became the best tag team there, became the best tag team in WWE, went to TNA, became the best tag team. And if you wanna go off of stats, like normal people do, they're the most
decorated tag team in the history.
Of all time. And that's including your Road Warriors and your
Steiners or whoever else.
Right. Anybody.
Right.
So, and you're talking about TNA. Did they have the New Japan titles?
They had New Japan titles as well.
Yeah. WWE, ECW. Yeah. And that's all 4 major spots in their era. So, yeah, man, most decorated. But their chemistry, man, I thought was really good. Devon would they both could sell, they both could do power moves.
Right.
I think they were good about knowing their place, knowing their
strengths and weaknesses.
Right. And I mean, even the way, of course, back in the ECW days, they talk about them all the time, almost causing riots in every city they were in. They did a house show in Marietta at the Cobb County Civic Center back in, it had to be like 98 or 99. And I went, and I mean to tell you, bro, the way they talked to the fans and, it was just downright disrespect, as disrespectful as you could get. And I mean, talking about people moms and putting genitalia in their mouth and everything they could think of. But to polish their self up the way they came into WWE and to make the turn, the evolve with their ring gear and going from the overalls to the fatigues. Finally got away, later on got away from the glasses a little bit. There's nothing you can say about that. I saw them against the Steiner brothers live at TNA in 2007, and one of the best matches I ever seen, even with the Steiners not being in their prime.
Right.
But and the 3D, the finish. What a great finish. You got the Usos use it.
The 1D, right?
Yeah, and I've heard the story about the Usos asking for permission and all that stuff. And of course the TLC matches.
Yeah. Well, those was like iconic in itself. Basically, the 2 of them that really put it on the map because they did SummerSlam 2000.
Yeah,
and that was the first one with the Hardys and Edge and Christian.
Yeah,
but then they came right back around WrestleMania 17 and stole the show in the Houston Astrodome on what a lot of people consider maybe the greatest WrestleMania in history.
Yeah.
And you stole the show on that card.
Right.
So and like you said, man, they definitely they very innovative as far as even with Devon, get the tables and just think how savage Bubba Ray was. Both of them. I mean, they was putting everybody through the tables. They put Nate Young through a table.
Numerous times. Numerous
I
times.
mean, wow. So and then and I know we talking about the tag team in itself, but I'm big about Bully Ray, Bubba Ray, Bully Ray, great pocket, Busted Open radio. Shout out to Busted Open. But I just think he got a great mind for the business, and
Absolutely.
and even just way he was able to transform himself from the Dudley Boys or Team 3D to the Bully Ray character when they did the H's and Eights and all of
Yeah.
that kind of stuff.
He become a world
And
champ. Yeah.
yeah, he world champ. Yeah, like but a great heel, man. Great
Oh,
heel.
yeah, very great. And like you said, the Busted, listen to Busted Open, you get a little bit, more respect for him, and you find out how, what, like you say, what a great mind he has for the business. But watching that LFG, the legends and future greats, and
Mhm.
he's one of the coaches on there. Have you caught any of those episodes?
No, I just seen bits and pieces of like a few segments here and there. I seen they
Yeah,
show some Undertaker, Booker T, or I know the squad that's on there, Mickey James and all that. But
yeah. But I just, like you say, he everywhere he goes, he's gonna stand out. And he stands out on that show as well.
hmm,
The way he grades the guys who he's picked, how he doesn't, he don't play around. He's not, he ain't no big softy,
right,
when it
right,
comes to making sure there's respect for the business and 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 the way they're practicing and trying to get better in the ring. Like, he don't play around, man. So shout out to the Dudley boys, man. Definitely deserve to be on our list, deserve to be on night one, but they're on night two.
you, I
Part two.
think matter of fact, and also don't forget, they had a wrestling school for a while there too,
Yeah.
and Devon twin sons, I think, if I'm not mistaken, should be in the business as well, working in the
Yeah.
Indies, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, so look
Showing
out
up.
for that. Yeah, look
Yeah.
out for that.
Yeah. Yeah. I thought Terrence, I can't forget the other one. I forget the other one's name. We'll have to look that up. But yeah, man, shout out to them.
Terrence and Clarence. No, I'm just playing. I don't
This is my brother Terrence and my other brother Terrence.
know.
Hey man, let's take it back let's go past the 90s, past the 80s. Let's go
Oh,
back some more.
where we going? Where we going? Where we going?
West Texas Outlaws.
West Texas Outlaws. Yeah.
Dusty Rhodes and Dick Murdoch.
Yes, that is classic, classic, classic right there. Uh Now that's deep because a lot of people know Dusty Rhodes as the American Dream, and and son of a plumber, and the common man.
Right.
But his West Texas, like them days right there with Captain Redneck Dick Murdoch.
Yeah.
Hey, they talk about super duper heels, and they
Right.
was back in AWA and all this other stuff, feud with Crusher and Bruiser and all kinds of folks back then, man. They was a super duper heel tag team back in the day, bro.
Yeah. Absolutely. So yeah, I had to throw them in there. I thought, because like you say, unless you way back in the day, all you know from Dusty is babyface,
Right,
and except for the little NWO turn,
right.
But yeah, man, here I think there's the stories that you've heard and they tell from outside of the ring are way better than the stories that they told in the ring.
Yeah. Also, you
You know,
remember Nate was running around with them before he was really Nate.
right? Yeah. Hey, you remember this when Nate's wanted to be rambling Ricky Rhodes at first. He wanted
Yeah,
to be Ricky
yeah.
Rhodes' brother.
Right. Rambling Ricky Rhodes.
Right. Yeah, but they said no. We think you got something, and they were
Right.
right. They were
Right.
absolutely right. But man, shout
Absolutely.
out R.I.P. Dick Murdoch, R.I.P. the Dream, the Thoreaus, the
If
American
you
Dream.
will. If
If
you
you
will.
will. All right. So, we both came up with the list to a certain extent, but I've added a few going in, and these are ones that the time that they spent in the NWA and WCW, and then of course they went into WWE. But I was never afraid of the Road Warriors. All right, never afraid of them as a kid. This team I was scared of, and that was the SST, the Samoan SWAT team.
Yeah. Yeah. Hey, hey. I mean, how could you not? You know what I mean? Think. Well, if you want to go there, I mean, how about the Wild Samoans, the OGs? You know what I mean? Alpha and Seeker. But
Yeah,
yeah, they always look scary with the hair. They're
yeah,
barefooted. You know what I mean? They tearing open coconuts and whatever, man. Like yeah, them
it,
chops they be doing and Samoan slams and then the super kicks
right.
and super athletic.
Yeah,
I
and
mean,
flashes. So when we talk about the Samoan SWAT team, we're talking about Samu and Rikishi.
right,
And of course, that's Rikishi is
Fatu.
Fatu, yeah. And yeah, man. Even when of course, when they went to as the Islanders, they were watered down when they got the WWE. But
Right.
you know, Paul Heyman, it made him look like he couldn't control them.
Right. Right.
So they would do their promos and stuff, and they'd be chewing on his phone or biting each other, or,
Right.
and I was like, these guys are crazy.
Right.
You know,
All right. Hey.
man, shot and Paul Heyman, and when they talk about him being with the Bloodline for years, back he was even with he was with the Bloodline in the 80s.
Right.
He rode with Alpha and Seeker in New York in the
Yeah,
70s.
he's really family.
Yeah,
Like,
no doubt.
yeah,
He
yeah,
is part of the Bloodline.
yeah.
Yeah, but the SST, I was afraid of. I hated it for anybody that I liked that had to wrestle with. I felt bad for.
I
And I
mean,
knew
even when they headbutt you, it looked like, like that was real, like,
any Samoan headbutt is supposed to hurt.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, I think that's one of them unwritten rules.
right,
Right.
right,
If you headbutt a Samoan, you supposed to act like you got hurt.
right.
Yeah,
Absolutely,
yeah.
absolutely.
Shout out to the SST, man, the Samoan, which I thought was an awesome name too. Samoan
Right.
name. And then of course they did go, but Rikishi, hey man, shout out to Rikishi though.
Yeah, absolutely.
They giving him a lot of gimmicks and stuff, and when he finally just became Rikishi, it all came, full circle as
I mean,
far
this
as
man was the Sultan
right,
and
right.
fought WrestleMania 13 against The Rock.
Yeah, I did it for the Rock.
I mean, yeah, you're right though. He did, but he the one that stuck around and went singles and like I said, had different gimmicks and like I said, he found the whole Rikishi thing
Yeah,
and I mean changed up his look and everything. I went to dancing. He wasn't tearing open pineapples and chewing on cordless phones and all kind of stuff. You know what I mean? Like
right.
dude, dude really, and became a superstar because of it. So,
Right.
uh,
Yeah.
shout out to Rikishi, man.
All right. You ready? We're gonna stick
Absolutely.
around. We're gonna stay in WCW, and we're gonna go with the Hollywood Blondes.
Yay.
Stunning Steve Austin and Flying Brian Pillman. This is before the loose cannon gimmick, which I
Right.
don't think is the gimmick. um, but it's before the loose cannon part of Brian Pillman. This is right after the Cincinnati Bengal trunks, and
Right.
him and the man tagging and all his matches with Jushin Thunder Liger and having
Right.
the light heavyweight championship. Him and Stunning Steve came together, and I think that might have been my first heel group that I started to like,
Okay.
because that's around about 12 or 13 we're getting, and it's starting to see wrestling different than you did when you was a kid, So I think that might have been the first heel group that I was actually like when I was younger, before I got older and started liking all the heels and looking into the history and stuff.
Okay.
Like that they both had the gold chains. They had the matching trunks, the stars on their boots, on the trunks. They had the vests and stuff. And I always like the guys that invested in themselves.
Right.
We talk about Flair so much on this because of course he's my favorite of all time. But guys invested in their look, like Sting, having so many different outfits and those jackets. The Macho Man was ridiculous with all
Right.
the hats, the capes, the jackets. He would have robes, robe one week, jacket the next week, all the fringes and everything like that. So yeah, I always dug that about them. Like I thought, of course, I thought they could have went longer before they broke them up. And of
Right.
course, they, you see, they both went to WWE. They feuded in WWE. Of course, you know what happened with Stone Cold, and we lost Pillman early. But Pillman was, I don't think he ever recovered from that motorcycle accident, or I don't know if it was whatever accident when he messed his foot up. I don't
It
think
was a Hummer. Or was he in a Hummer?
Hummer. He was in the Hummer.
Yeah.
Kerry Von Erich. He was on the motorcycle.
Right. Right.
Yeah. So yeah, but he had a Hummer and had a real bad accident, messed his leg up. Still signed with the WWE, involved with the Heart Foundation and stuff like that. And of course, we lost him a little bit into that, to the not there long, couple of years, if that. But the fact that they still signed him injured was big in itself. And just show you
Right.
what you can sit here and do a whole episode on Brian Pillman.
Right.
From playing in the NFL as a nose guard, playing at Miami of Ohio, full scholarship, playing football to be that size. All the throat surgery that he had.
Right. Right.
Just it's just sad, man. Sad for him to go so soon, but his son's out here doing his thing.
Legends came.
Right. But yeah, and of course, what happened with Stunning Steve.
Right.
He's on everybody's Mount Rushmore.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah, man. So shout out to the Hollywood Blondes. Hollywood Blondes.
Yeah. I, of course, as I always say, the Steiner brothers, my A-ball MJG. And of course, another one of my favorites is Arn and Tully. Like, I put them both in a different category. But Hollywood Blondes might have been my favorite tag team after them. I've always been I like Stone Cold when he was stunning Steve Austin.
Right.
I always liked that guy. I don't know. It was just always something about him, So and then when he got with Pillman, like you said, the whole Hollywood Blondes thing, and they doing the camera action. I can hear the theme music in my head now.
Yeah,
I just really dug them, man, and of course the run wasn't long as it could have been. They also feuded with Flair Arn.
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
had that main event and won that Clash of Champions. That one particular, of course, I don't
yeah.
remember
Remember
who
when they were
Clash of Champions.
dressed up like them and
Right,
with gray hair and glasses and stuff? They were calling
right,
they were calling Flair and Arn old back in 92, 93.
right, right. Which hell, yeah, right. So, but yeah, they definitely, but again, they didn't stick around too long, as far as keeping us as a tag team. For some reason, they switched up on. But they went on to bigger and better things. Of course, like you said, we lost Pillman too soon. And then of course, know the history about Stone Cold Steve Austin. So, but that's a good pick though. Shout out Hollywood Blondes. Definitely one of my favorite WCW tag teams.
Yeah. We talked about Arn and Tully, and we didn't talk about them surprisingly in the first episode. So we'll stay with them for part 2 and keep going with them. And Arn and Tully were part of the Four Horsemen, World Tag Team Champions. Went to WWE together with the Brain Busters, and of course Arn came back. Tully never made it back, but the run that they had together, they were dominating. Double A's move set back then was above everybody else's. He had the gut wrench, the spine buster, the body slam with your hand by the arm pinned back
Behind your back, yeah.
Man, I just little stuff like that I always like. And that's old school anyway, working on the body part, something like that. But
keeping them in the corner.
Yeah. Love when they would do the fake tags and stuff. And
right.
Of course they always had JJ Dillon out there.
Right.
But ran through the NWA. Ran through NWA. They had the titles, lost the titles to the Midnight Express before they went to the WWE to become the Brain Busters. But and they had good runs over there.
To be managed by Bobby the Brain.
Right. Which says a lot, as far as being a heel, because if you were going to be managed by somebody, that was who you need to be managed by.
Right.
His resume is ridiculous as well. The
greatest manager of all time, bro.
Man, you had the Brain Busters, you had Flair, Andre, Haku,
Rick Rude. Yeah,
Mr. Perfect.
King Kong Bundy, Mr. Wonderful Paul Aldor.
Yeah, Mr. Perfect, Kurt Hennig.
Right.
Yeah,
right.
Absolute resume is ridiculous. Yeah,
right.
Greatest manager of all time.
Hey, Nick Baldwin, Ray Stevens. I mean, don't forget about the AWA stuff.
Right. But yeah, man, Arn and Tully. We've talked about the Horsemen. We've talked about Arn and Tully a 1,000 times already on this.
Right.
Our stint doing this podcast so far. So, but they were so good at that time. Even Tully, I always liked Tully. I know you did too.
Yeah, that's my guy.
Yeah, do that little slingshot suplex.
Yeah,
and yeah, San Antonio's finest.
if you really think about it, how we talked about how, and I know we already did a whole two-part Horseman series, but if you think about it, they wasn't tag team that long.
They weren't.
Because when they did that run when Barry Windham and when they pushed Ole out, when they brought Lex, that was kind of like when they when they started teaming together, Arn and
Yeah.
Tully. And then they ran course and Wyndham got involved. They kept up with that because Wyndham was the number 2 guy.
Yeah.
And then they went to WWE for that year. And then of course we all know how that fell apart. We ain't gonna go into that. And they was never a tag team again. So man, but as far as even, the Minnesota Wrecking Crew with Arn and Ole, and then the other horsemen variations of tag teams. Arn and Tully was my favorite, and I think was the best out of all the different variations of the horsemen. Any tag team variation they had, I felt like Arn and Tully was the best tag team.
Yeah, and that's why they belong on this list, even if they were together, for 15 minutes.
Right.
But yeah, man. So shout out to the both of them, and yeah, shout out to the Horsemen anyway for being the greatest faction of all time.
Absolutely. And then we have to say we talked about Dudley's being the most decorated tag team in history. But of course we know Arn and Tully both was the NWA tag team champions. And when they went up north, become Brainbusters, yes, they was WWF tag team champions as well.
Right. Absolutely. All right. Let's go to WWE, WWF at the time, the British Bulldogs.
Hey,
we didn't talk about them either on night 1, part 1.
Yeah, I'm gonna tell you what. So of course I know growing up I did watch WWF more than you did. British Bulldogs was probably the first tag team that I was ever very really intrigued by. Like they was, I don't know, man. They was just they had the dog Matilda, and they was all built, and they was English accent, and Dynamite Kid, man, like them snap suplexes is just how aggressive he was.
Like that.
Yeah, and we was kids, but I was like, this was different,
Yeah.
Then they had a great feud with the Hart Foundation, so I kind of ended up liking both of them for that reason. But like the British Bulldogs was the first, but they was the baby faces, so it was like that was the ones I was like, hey, this is pretty cool,
Yeah.
what I mean? They probably like about the first tag team that I liked growing up,
And you see the older stuff when they had the blue and the gray on,
right?
You know what I'm saying? But and they had, of course, when they had you get a little more flamboyant with them later on when they had Matilda the dog with them that they bring out all the time, and
they had like the English flag and on their tights and that kind of stuff.
A little more bright. Ooh, had a little bit of yawn right there. But yeah, man. Of course, lost Davy Boy real soon. He it was early 40s, still in the business.
Right.
And of course, how the thing with Dynamite Kid was that he lived, a good ways longer, but was already messed up in a wheelchair and all that stuff. And
right.
That Dynamite Kid is a sad story, dog.
Yes. Yeah. When you really peel back the layers of the onion.
Yeah.
And yeah.
But RIP to both of them, man. Shout out to them. Shout out to the British Bulldogs. They had a good run. They had a good run in WWE.
Absolutely.
Time.
Of course,
Davey Boy would come over. Had a couple of stints over there in WCW. But as far as tag team, it was strictly Stampede Wrestling and WWF.
And WWF, yeah.
Let's stick in WWF, but we'll go to WWE. New Age Outlaws.
If you didn't know,
Your ass better call somebody.
hey, now that's like one of those sleeper teams right there
Yeah.
because they of course obviously DX. I know we mentioned the Horsemen, of course NWO and DX is like and then of course they had several versions of DX,
Mhm.
but I think this DX was Triple H's DX, and that's what at that time the timing of that and New Age Outlaws were perfect for the business and what they was trying to accomplish at that time, what they was marketing, and they put in some work. You know what I mean? Multiple tag team championships, and they took the torch and they ran with it. And I just always think about right before, was it the night before they officially became members? Was it WrestleMania 14? That was that the dumpster match or whatever when they push Chainsaw Charlie and was he Captain
Well, when
Jack
they
that
pushed
night?
him in, that was on
Uh,
Raw when they pushed him in, pushed him over the thing.
oh, so
That
that
was
was the
on Raw.
brawl. Okay, but that was the
Yeah,
match.
but
So the actual match was
the
on.
match, that's where the match came from, the
Yeah,
dumpster match, because they had put him in that dumpster and pushed him off, pushed
right.
him off of the stage,
The
the entrance
stage,
stage.
right,
Yeah, so that's
right.
why they end up having that dumpster
The match at
match.
WrestleMania.
It's a case where you got two guys that you're trying to fit them here, trying to fit them there. They were doing Billy Gunn was doing Rockabilly at the time. He had already been what was that tag team they were called?
Smoking Guns.
With Smoking Guns, with the guy that was supposed to win
Bart Gunn, the one that won the
Bart
Brawl
Gunn
for
Brawl.
All.
Yeah.
And they were tag team champions.
Yeah. And then they broke apart, and you had Hillbilly Honky Tonk Man with Billy Gunn. And he was doing Rockabilly. That's when they came together. And because you had, Road Dogg with the road. He was, he was with Brad Jeff Jarrett, supposed to be his roadie. When they was doing My Baby Tonight
But he was the
song,
one
he was
singing.
singing.
You're right. You're right.
Right. But took two mid Carters and made them Hall of Famers, putting them together.
Absolutely.
And these guys, bro, they shaved Hawk's mohawk off.
Talking about Savage. That's crazy.
The stuff they were doing, Billy Gunn is just a freak of nature, first of all.
Till
And
this
then Road
day.
Dogg is so good on the mic. Could still work from, you talking about wrestling had more than one royal family. Come from the Armstrongs.
Right.
Brian Armstrong. Went to Marines, Desert Storm, all that, and then got into wrestling and started in the NWA, like his brothers and everything. But I remember I always wondered why I didn't know. This is before the internet and everything. When he had that shirt that said, "Look, Mom, no curse," because it was the Armstrong curse. He couldn't get over it. He couldn't do this but he took that and left it and became a superstar. And when you got the whole crowd saying your stick every night, good guy or babyface or heel, you're doing something. I believe they're 6-time WWE champions.
Right, because you remember they had that short run when they came back.
when they gave it up to Usos. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. Yeah. So, but yeah, man, New Age Outlaws, got to put them up there as far as longevity. They had long runs, long title runs, and were great heel tag teams. Because if you remember when they first got together and when their first title run, every match they were just barely winning by cheating and would have to run off.
Right.
You know, they would have to leave the arena after their match and run to the rental car. You know what I'm saying? Remember back when they had the rental cars in the back and the cars already running?
Yeah, they jump in there and they pull it off.
Like
and they showed them chase right. And then they showed them chasing the car. You know. Yeah.
Oh yeah. All right, man. Well, we talked about the Usos, so let's stick with them and talk about the Usos. We just brought them up.
Well, I tell you what, with the Usos, man, I'm gonna say there's gonna be some recency biasness right here, if that's even a word, biasness. But
it is now.
Yeah, but right. But I know it's hard to compare eras, just like sports. You know, it's hard to compare Shaquille O'Neal to Kareem Abdul-Jabbar and Bill Russell and Will Chamberlain, and you know, or Johnny Unitas to Tom Brady or Lamar Jackson or Patrick Mahomes, whatever. Right? That's sports. Everything involved. But these guys, man, I had to say they one of the greatest tag teams in history. And I just think, what's the criteria? You got to think the whole mystique is they're twin brothers, first of all, which is unique in itself. I mean, there's been brother tag teams, obviously, but they're twin brothers. And I think the only thing that will hurt that argument is the era of tag team wrestling that they had to come up in, because tag team wrestling kind of fell off. That wasn't the focus no more. Like they just putting just two single guys that almost situation what we talked about earlier. Two guys they just put together and say, hey, make it work. And they had a lot of tag teams that way. And it just to look how long it took for them to really get on the WrestleMania card. You know, they've been in the game for a minute, you know, so they finally got their flowers, get the spotlight late. Of course, you know, we already know Jay, he's the current world heavyweight champion. But we talking about just far tag teams, man. They held it down for a long time, and them and the New Day was the constant. And there were other tag teams in between, like the Bar and others, but they had a real weak tag team division that couldn't really get over. And they had good tag teams like FTR and others, you know, but it was just for some reason tag team wrestling in WWE, like the last 10 years or so, it kind of struggled to really took a while for it to get that momentum to go. So like that, the argument, you know, is kind of like that. I don't think that'll hurt them. But you talked about being innovative. They even changed, they evolved with their look. Remember they had the hair and right, you know, yeah, so many times, man. And talking about double team moves, you know, you want to talk about, you know, the wrestling aspect of it. Very innovative in the ring. I mean, they just, you know, then of course the lineage in itself, you know, we talked about their uncle or their daddy, you know, with the Samoan SWAT team or you know, the uncles, the wild Samoans, and we can definitely obviously have an episode about their bloodline. But I think they're not gonna be appreciated until I mean, I'm not saying I appreciate it now, but it's gonna be one of those like years later. It's like, you know
Like,
what, man, them dudes really was like good, you know.
yeah, yeah. Um, like I love how you talked about how they evolved with their outfits. Went from to wrestling in the Air Force Ones and the day one ish, and because they had the face painted one time. They came out and just had the spandex. They didn't have the drawers on, but they had the shorts on,
Right,
shorts and boots.
right,
With the
right,
long hair. But always doing. They always do the splash, the Samoan drop. But the stuff they would do together, and it was like I say, they're already twins, so they're already on the same page. But they're on the same page, and then some.
right.
Being twin brothers. But I'm with you on the years later. People are really gonna be, of course, they're Hall of Famers, of course, but people are really gonna be like, wow, you're right, they were that good, you know. I see them getting back together later on, because I don't see, Jay gonna sizzle out eventually. And it's just you don't want to say that, but it's gonna happen because you know
Right.
how this
The
business
business
works,
works. Yeah.
So I do see them coming back together, at one point, kind of maybe before they call it quits, having a career, a run together, but it's not like they're in their 45, 46. They got some years left,
Right.
God willing. So, but I definitely see them coming back together, having another title run, tag team title run together. But man, shout out to them for all the stuff that they've already done and will continue to do. Being a part of that bloodline storyline in itself. Over how many days were they tag team champs?
It was like 300 and something.
Man,
Well, no, it was longer than that.
yeah,
I don't know. Yeah, they was
yeah.
yeah they was
It
they
wasn't
were
the
on one,
Roman Reigns. It wasn't Roman Reigns numbers, but they was up there.
but it was up there though. Yeah.
Yeah. So, hey man, it's clear we're gonna have to have a part 3, but I think part 3 will be special. So I'm gonna save one team I wanted to talk about till part. But let's talk about 3 more, and then we'll call
Okay.
it a night. And part 3 will be real. We'll have a few left that we can talk about, but
Okay.
that'll be real special. So let's talk about Doom.
Hey. All
Butch
right.
Reed, Ron Simmons. Let's hear it.
I tell you what. And again, you got to think the mindset we was in. So we about 10 years old. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
yeah,
Uh, and when I seen them dudes with them masks, and they was with woman, and it was like, whoa, who these big dudes right here? Like they look. I mean, talk about looking dangerous.
yeah,
They look dangerous. Like really, like they was intimidating, and they had the mask on, and was like, man, who is this? And it then power moves and uh, I don't man they man I don't know that was and talking about heel teams. Uh, and again, I know you talk about the Road Warriors, how they didn't really intimidate you, and you talked about the Samoan SWAT team was the ones that really made you like, whoa, them guys crazy, which I agree. But this was the first team that really made me like, oh shit, you know, that looked like they was for real.
yeah.
You know what I mean? Like this is not a work.
Right.
you know.
When they fought after they lost their mask, wrestling the Steiner brothers, when they came down and had that street fight with the Horsemen,
Oh, so Starcade 90, man. Hey, you had them jeans on, bro.
Man, Ron Simmons came down in them jeans with them snakeskin boots on. When I seen him, the way they were dressed, like you knew, like somebody's in trouble. Somebody gonna pay. And then you do. If I ever see a guy like that out there on the street, I'm not gonna say a word to him, but yes, sir. No,
hey, with the tape fist,
right.
tape. You see somebody with their wrist and hands tape, and they got them jeans on.
Had the light colored stonewash jeans on.
Hey, for real though. Yeah.
Those guys, yeah. So if you're not familiar with Doom out there, do your homework.
Right.
Doom. That's why God invented YouTube for stuff like that.
Yeah, and of course, we're talking about them as a tag team, but and then they also end up feuding against each other when their run was over. Of course, Teddy Long. They started out Woman as their manager, then of course Teddy Long ended up being their manager. Shout out Teddy Long. And pretty much they were heel teams pretty much the whole time. And then of course Ron Simmons was the one that turned face when they feuded. But they both had different career trajectories though. Butch Reed was in the business a little earlier than Ron. He came up
he
with
was on the backhand when they were in Doom. He had
right.
already had a long career.
Right. He came in with he was Mid-South with Bill Watts and had a pretty good run all them years. He also made it to WWF around 86, 87. He was the natural Butch Reed. Had a match at WrestleMania 3, Coco Beware. Had a run there. You hear Butch's of course, we see the shoot interviews and read the info. Had quite the rep. So, but definitely had a pretty solid career. You look back at his resume and everything. So, then of course Ron Simmons, like I said, he was later on after that. His career took off after the Doom thing and became the first Black African American world heavyweight champion for a major company. So shout out to him. You can't never take that away from him. Ever. So All American from Florida State. Of course, JR, I tell you, he finished sixth in the Heisman voting or whatever. JR be having the stats.
Right.
He was voted.
It was like
top speller in third grade. He won a softball toss contest in fifth grade.
He was at elementary prep on a finger painting scholarship, but yeah, man. Shout out to dude. Hey, man, Ron Simmons, college football, WWE Hall of Fame,
right?
And like you said, first African American heavyweight champion. Well deserved, and like I said, you can't never take that from him.
And it's crazy because he's a part of another tag team that
I'm about to say he can be on this list twice.
Yeah.
About the APA, right?
Yeah.
So Acolytes, APA, but yeah, he's on this list twice because they deserve to be on there.
Oh, absolutely.
They talking about entertaining this can be. The stuff they shot in those bars and stuff.
Right.
If you look at the APA, the Untold on Peacock,
right?
They about that they shot at Tim White's on
bars.
The bar.
Yeah.
Where that bar up at least 10 or 12 times.
You got that insurance money,
right? On Mr. McMahon,
right?
All right, I want to throw one in here, and it is New Japan tag team,
Okay.
and a WCW tag team. And I want to talk about Dr. Death and Terry Gordy.
Yes, sir.
Dr. Death, Steve Williams, and Terry Bam Bam Gordy.
What was their name? Something violence or something. They had a team name.
Mm.
I forgot what it was, but yeah, they were definitely some major players in in that era,
Yeah,
because like you said, they was made super duper in Japan, and
right.
which they like Gordy, Doc and Gordy are like legendary over there, and of course that goes with like they love the big heel Americans like a Van Vader, and Stan Hansen, Bruiser Brody, Scott Norton, guys like that. Uh,
Right.
but Doc and Gordy definitely fit that bill, and they both had great single runs. But them as a tag team was just they was beasts, and then came over here and had a feud with the Steiners and other teams over here. They had the WCW championship tag titles, and then they had the NW. They brought the NWA
Yeah.
tag titles, and they had that tournament and stuff. Yeah, it's a little realness to cause Dr. Death, of course you hear his story. He was a wrestler, amateur wrestler at University of Oklahoma. Also played football. He's offensive guard. Uh, very, they portrayed him as probably the toughest guy in the locker room, right?
Right.
Oklahoma Stampede, also a member of the varsity club. Dr. Death definitely and was real big in the Mid South coming up,
Right.
and he
UWF.
was UWF world champion.
Mhm.
Uh, and then you got to think Gordy came. He's a free bird. He was Michael Hayes and Buddy Roberts, and they was that was a whole different dynamic. Even though he was always the rough and tough, he didn't change the way he acted when he got with Doc. When he got with Gordy, I mean, when he got with Doc, it was like they just, it just made sense. Just made sense. But if you want to talk about intimidating, we talked
Yeah.
about Doom, and we talked about other teams that was like you say someone on SWAT team just being intimidating. Well, you see Doc and Gordy get out of a damn pickup truck. You're not gonna go. You're
Yeah.
gonna go the other way.
Right. Absolutely.
I mean, think about it,
No, absolutely. Like, especially if you see a lot of those Japan matches where they, the weight
man.
is so stiff anyway.
Woo.
That's right up a lot of them guys' alley.
Right.
Of course, it didn't work good for Dr. Death in the brawl fall, but
Yeah. Well, he was old by then anyway. Even though no
yeah,
excuse, but
but that thing was like made. The whole gimmick was made up to go around him.
yeah. Well, we are right. Right. That's a whole nother
Like
story.
you said, that was in his. He was already on the back nine as far as his career. You know, but like I said, them two very intimidating, very stiff, big guys that can move quick, do them big power moves, but can jump up real fast, clothesline the hell out you, and just they just whooped ass.
Right.
Period.
Right.
Whooped ass. So
That had no real gimmick. It was just like
yeah, it
it's
was just
just what it is.
man, we
Yeah.
gonna beat the shit out of y'all and try
Yeah.
to get paid. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I don't mind even and of course the longevity is not there. With a lot of these teams weren't together for a long time. You
Right.
got a handful of teams that were together for a long time, and we haven't even, touched the Bushwhackers or the Colossal Connection, the Barbarian and the Warlord. Like we still
Right.
we got a ways to go, dog. We ain't talked about the outsiders.
Right. Right.
Um the Twin Towers, you know. So, but that's why there's going to be a part 3, and we're saving a few for part 3. But we're going to talk about one more, and it had to be at least maybe 2012, 2013 when I caught these guys on the internet.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't remember when it was, how many years ago it was. Anyway, caught these guys on the internet, and it might have been longer than that, bro. And was watching some, and then that's when, you know, just checking out Ring of Honor,
Right.
you know, because you're hearing about it on the dirt sheets and all that stuff. So, you know, I'm expecting to see these guys, you know, be the sons of Jack and Jerry Briscoe.
Right. Right.
Jay and Mark Briscoe, the Briscoe brothers, from Ring of Honor, from Sandy Fork, Delaware. When I seen these guys, man, and it wasn't a match, it was a promo that they did on the chicken farm that they lived at and worked at. And I was hooked. So then I go on this long rabbit hole of Ring of Honor, the Briscoes, and see they have fought and wrestled everybody. 13-time Ring of Honor tag team champions. 13 times. You know, lost Jay. It might have been 3 years. I want to say it was either 2 or 3 years ago. You know, RIP Jay Briscoe. Mark Briscoe doing his thing over there at AEW and doing his thing, and you know how they got the Ring of Honor part of it too. But I have never been so intrigued when you see a new something in wrestling that you find that you haven't never seen before. And then you just got this whole list of stuff just to watch. I remember, bro, I'm talking about for days, watching their matches in Japan, watching the stuff that they did in Ring of Honor and TNA, you know, back when TNA was still TNA NWA.
Right. They had a totally different look too.
They were
when they were young. Yeah.
Real young.
Yeah.
And, you know, I think Jay was 18, Mark was 17, and Mark couldn't work in certain places because he was too young.
Right.
But yeah, man, the Briscoe brothers, my absolute top 5. I'm gonna say they're in my top 5. You know, because like you can't take out the Steiner brothers and all that, who I grew up. But they in my top 5 is my favorites. You talk about jail together. You got Mark is the high flyer, Jay is the hard hitter. They both can sell, both will do the hot tag, both can take care of business. On the same page always. Jay, 3-time ROH World Heavyweight Champion. And just some all around good dudes, man. They worked hard. They were good family guys. And the only way you knew it because they let you in so much. You know, Ring of Honor would let you in. You know, they do a lot of that stuff that involves their family and stuff of that nature with their promos and stuff. You know, just doing stuff different than WWE. But I wanted the Briscoes to have a WWE paycheck, but I never wanted to see them go to WWE.
Yeah, because they would have got watered down.
Oh, but it would have been like nothing you ever seen before. They would have hated them. You know, they'd have loved them because people would have knew who they were.
Right.
Not a whole lot of people, but some people would have known who they were.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, and they would have, as far as their work, it's a different story. People are going to dig that, but they wouldn't have been the Briscoes.
Right.
And then they just wouldn't have, they would have been so watered down. So, I myself, man, like I said, they're one of my favorites of all time. R.I.P. to Jay. I hate that they didn't get to get on AEW TV and ever hit that national peak of, the whole world being able to see their talent like they would have at AEW or WWE.
Right.
But, just certain things were said why they kept him off of TV and why Jay wasn't allowed, they weren't, being, picked up by AEW.
Right.
But the man believed in what he believed in, and you can't fault nobody for that. You believe in what you believe in, and if you stand for it, man, kudos to you for standing for what you believe in. The matches with FTR, the dog collar match, the matches with the Young Bucks, with the Kingdom, Rock and Roll Express, the stuff over in Japan. It's so much, their promos, their storytelling. It's crazy, man. To this day, I watch that stuff over and over, especially now that Jay is gone and passed away. I've never seen two guys just so entertaining just by being themselves. You know what I mean? And they're both, funny, both hilarious. But even as heels, they were hilarious, but in a heel way.
Right.
Even the matches they had with the Good Brothers, who just returned to New Japan Pro Wrestling, by the way.
We had an episode about custom belts.
Yeah.
And I don't remember if we mentioned Jay Briscoe, but he had a custom.
I think so. I think we did.
Because he had a custom Ring of Honor World title.
Mm-hmm.
That was pretty cool looking.
Yeah. It got a little flack because it had half of the Confederate flag on there.
Yeah, well.
But people believe what they believe in. One thing I do know, I remember watching a shoot interview with them, and they were saying, what is the most thing people think about you until they get to know you? And they both said that we're racist. Everybody thinks we're racist till they get to know us.
Right.
And knowing that, Mark and Jay Lethal are super close.
Right.
They're just country boy. And it's funny because they're country boys from the north. Because they're from
right.
Delaware.
I mean, yeah.
Farmers, you know what I'm saying? So it's a little weird. But they wear the star. They used to wear the stars and bars, on their trunks and stuff, and kind of got away from that stuff. But just like the Freebirds did it. But the Freebirds did it, because they were representing Georgia.
Right. And you got to think, when the Freebirds did it, like it was like Dukes of Hazzard and all that shit was like one of the hottest shows on TV. Right. So it wasn't even quite looked at quite the same.
Everybody loved it. So.
Right.
The older we've gotten and the more, and you don't want to say sensitive, but nitpicky at every little bitty thing. And we don't really talk about politics. We don't talk about politics at all on here.
Right.
But, we see stuff. And to me now, if it offends somebody, then okay, I got a problem with it. if it offends a group of people, then we probably shouldn't have it.
Right.
You know what I mean? But I do know that people that liked it or wore it, it wasn't because they're racist. You understand what I'm saying? Some people did now, but some people didn't. You know what I mean? I always thought it was the coolest looking flag there was until I learned about it. And then, it ain't like I was like, you can't parade it around. You know what I mean?
Right.
So, but yeah, man, I just, people see stuff and just automatically assume,
Right.
Even me, because it caught me off guard. I'm like, wow, I've never seen nobody, not in this day and age.
Right. That's why you brought up the Freebirds and like, yeah, but they did that shit in the early '80s. You know what I mean?
Well, you thought it would be worse then than it is now.
Yeah. Right.
Because it was way more. Racism should have been way more familiar back then than it should be now.
Right. But like I said, had Dukes of Hazzard and stuff on TV. So.
And now you can't even look at that. They want to, you put the American flag up there.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? They from Hazard County, man. Hazard County, Georgia.
Right.
But hey man, but as far as the Briscoes in the ring, I just infatuated with them, man. They're absolutely they're one of the best tag teams in the world to me. Especially with the work that they do with Jay, with those European uppercuts that he would do, they would just move so fast. And Mark was just so smooth with his high off the top rope stuff. You know what I mean? It would just look effortless for him. He does the froggy bow where he does the frog splash and then turns into an elbow.
Yeah.
Then does the redneck kung fu. But his swanton bomb and all that stuff that he would do. Oh, their matches with the Hardys. They had a couple with them. But Mark was just so smooth with it. And Jay was just so strong and so fast and hard hitting. You know what I mean? Mark was shooting star press on about 5 guys outside and land on his feet when he do it. And jump up and high five the crowd, with his front teeth missing. So, but I tell you what, I would love to do just a whole show just about them one day, because that's how much I could talk about them and how much I just love them guys, man. I never got to meet them, but those are, when you got, those are the ones like you got the fuse and you like wrestling stuff. But when I seen them, I was like, I would like to meet them dudes.
Right.
You know what I mean? So, but yeah, man, shout out to the Briscoes, man. 13-time ROH tag team champs. RIP Jay Briscoe. And bro, the way that he passed though, in a car accident, bringing your 2 girls back from a cheerleading competition. And the last video he posted is him doing the choreography they had to do for the competition. He doing it with them. You know what I'm saying? And you can hear the mom in there recording it, laughing. You know what I'm saying? Because here's this big old 6'2", tatted up, 240-pound dude doing cheerleading practice with his 2 girls.
Right.
So just like what a dad he was, you know what I mean? And the wrestling community misses that dude, man. Like I said, I hate that they didn't get that, that worldwide exposure, But man, shout out to the Briscoes.
It's like we mentioned earlier about the Usos, where they might not be appreciated till later, but I mentioned because the tag team division in WWE was so weak, right? But like the Briscoes benefited from working in the Indies and the Ring of Honor then, because listen to the tag teams, they like you said, the Hardys, the Young Bucks, FTR, like, man, you know what I mean? If the Usos fought any of them, it was because they worked in WWE, but I mean, which I don't remember the history with who FTR. They were the Revival when they was in WWE, and just I'm just listening to the names of matches that you said that of teams that they did get to wrestle, and that definitely. And you talked about YouTube and folks who's not familiar with the Briscoe brothers. That definitely be a good watch to dive into a deep rabbit hole and to pull up the Briscoe brothers and watch a lot of their matches with the Hardys and FTR and other teams that are currently working right now in the business. And
hey, shout out to Papa Briscoe, big man, the dad. Like I say, their gimmick was they were chicken farmers, and they actually were chicken farmers, and they were landscapers. They wrestled on the weekends and worked during the week. And would shoot promos while they were weed eating, while they were on the chicken farm. The promos in itself, man, when they were talking about going to WWE and how they were told they weren't cosmetically pleasing. You know what I mean?
That sound like Vince-ism, cosmetic pleasing. I can hear him saying that. Yeah.
Pleasing. Yeah.
He probably had offered Bruce Pritchard. They're not cosmetic pleasing.
Right.
Good. Look at them, pal.
But yeah, man. But if you haven't never looked at check the Briscoes out. Mark and Jay Briscoe, man, and most of their stuff in Ring of Honor in Japan, and because they went to Japan and Noah and New Japan, they went all over the place, and so man, yeah, shout out to the Briscoes. I can't, it's like I want to say so much and give them so, we'd be here all night, but that's how much I dig them guys. But we definitely got plenty left for part 3. This has been part 2 of our favorite, or who we think are the greatest tag teams of all time, and just giving some flowers to these tag teams, man. That's all we're doing, because it's Welcome to Wrasslin', and we'll be back next week with the review of Saturday night's main event. So be ready for that. Again, like, comment, subscribe, tell your friends about us, and get them to subscribe. All right. Hey, brother, it's been episode 21, man. Welcome to Wrasslin'.
Welcome to Wrasslin'.
Welcome to Wrasslin', Chetty Bobby. Welcome to Wrasslin' with Big E and the POT. Podcast tag champs of the whole world, slamming like a DDT. Got it just like a figure four. Hulk Hogan, all they do is flex. Talking wrestling while they get the dough. Off the top like a superplex. Think they letting up? Hell no. Dusty Rose with the elbow. From the corner like a stinging splash. Straight to the face, I know you felt those. Hey, y'all crying out for help though. Rising up like the dead man. About to go upside your head like Stone Cold with the bedpan. Bottom line, if you want the facts, welcome to Wrestling where you need to be. Chetty Bobby, this show improved like John Cena, you ain't seeing me. Bottom line, if you want the facts, welcome to Wrestling where you need to be. Chetty Bobby, this show improved like John Cena, you ain't seeing me. Yeah.